he tightened his grip on the Gladstone back. The beach below was not crowded by Saturday standards. There were sufficient customers to keep the boatmen and bathing machine attendants busy, but the real shoulder-to-shoulder occupation of the Pebbles was over for 1882. Those remaining were middle-class families for the most part, seated placidly at decent distances from each other, enjoying the air and avoiding the sun under large hats and parasols. A few stone-throwers played ducks and drakes at the water's edge. The summer spectacle of lines of Cockney paddlers, boots suspended from their necks, was over. Anyone venturing into the water now came from a corporation machine properly attired in a striped costume. Moscrop joined the general movement in the direction of the West Pier. In his check suit and bowler, he was soon inconspicuous, one of a long parade of freshly arrived visitors taking that first bracing turn along the prom. The tempo was leisurely, dictated by bath chairs. The conversation loud and entirely taken up with a social roll call. Everyone was expected back from Trouville or Baden-Baden this week or next. The fashionable visitors list office in East Street had never received so many callers. He looked about him among the nodding parasols. Really, those resonant accents were deceiving. 3/4 of his fellow promenaders had not arrived socially. They strolled determinedly among the elite, scanning the faces approaching from the Hove direction in hopes of someone recognising them. Moscrop preferred to make a detailed observation of those nearest him. Odd how satisfying it was to spot a slightly faded blazer or a fraying hem. Oh, he was no fashion plate himself, but he had no pretensions of being one. He had a more original reason for taking a promenade. In recent years, he had made a small pastime of mingling with crowds. Often he left his shop in London's Oxford Street and shambled along the pavement with the throng as far as Marble Arch for the pleasure it gave him. At weekends he liked to visit the Crystal Palace, not to watch fireworks, but to stand among thousands. He thought of Waterloo Station as his club, quite the most congenial place in London. Morning and evening, when the activity there was at its height, he was invariably seated below the clock reading the Times. His looks were ideally suited to his hobby. His features were undistinguished in every way. You could not possibly spot him in a crowd. But his face was adaptable to each vagary of fashion. When half London went in for luxuriant Dundreary whiskers, Albert Moscrop's growth conformed exactly to the ideal. And when, in the 70s, the clean-shaven face framed under a central parting became high ton, his physiognomy was equal to it. He passed 2 days at work before anyone noticed the change. Now, behind the blonde moustache and with side whiskers scrupulously trimmed level with each earlobe, he was all that a man in his 40s was required to be. Perhaps he tended to stoop a little when relaxed, but it happened too rarely to be a threat. He was constantly on guard against idiosyncrasies. There was excitement ahead. Even a few nicely modulated squeals of terror. Knowledgeable promenaders explained to their escorts that the gunshots they could hear came from a rifle and pistol saloon under the West Pier. Thrills unbounded. Treading the planks of a pier was hair-raising enough, without guns discharging underneath. Moscrop savoured the polite hysteria around him like chalybeate water. He wryly observed that no one actually turned back. Even the faintest hearts were wrapping their gowns across their fronts in readiness for the turnstile. As he passed inside, he was careful to hold his bag at chest height. Once through, he strode the wooden causeway with a springy step. What better 2 pennyworth existed than these 370 yards, projecting audaciously across beach and foam and shallows to the deeper waters, indifferent to the power that surged and sucked beneath?